Hello, baseball fans. I'm Mark Davidson. This is the Chatters Box, and on today's episode, we are previewing the 2022 Baltimore Orioles. The 2021 Baltimore club slogged their way to 52 wins, making it 3 out of 4 seasons with 100 losses. Their lone sub 100 loss season being the 60 game of 2020. In the history of baseball, only 5 teams have accomplished losing 100 games in 4 out of 5 seasons, so yes. Times are bleak in Baltimore, but they are not hopeless. I don't think they're staring down a losing streak like the 1998 to 2011 Orioles experienced. That's 14 seasons in a row if you're keeping track at home. Now, things aren't that bad. The Orioles organization currently boasts 2 top 10 prospects in pitcher Grayson Rodriguez and, of course, the unanimous #1 overall prospect, catcher Adley Rutschman. The system also has 3 other top 100 prospects, pitcher DL Hall, infielder Gunnar Henderson, and outfielder Colton Cowser. A couple other guys that deserve a mention are infielder Jordan Westberg, outfielder Ryan McKenna, and outfielder Heston Kjerstad. Unfortunately, the Orioles had virtually no success last decade developing their prospects outside of Manny Machado, who probably would have been a star no matter what system he came up in. The list of names that the Orioles drafted that went on to have more success with other teams are Kevin Gausman, Eduardo Rodriguez, Dylan Bundy, and Jake Arrieta, not to mention guys whose projected talent simply failed to materialize, like Chance Sisco and still current Oriole Hunter Harvey. Under Mike Elias, things are reportedly improving, and 2022 feels like a turning point of sorts. That doesn't mean they're going to threaten 4th place in the AL East or anything. There's just simply too many guys at the major league level and even in the high minors who should be in their prime that can't be counted on to provide even average major league production. And speaking of top prospects, some of these guys are former top prospects to boot. On the current roster, Austin Hayes and Ryan Mountcastle are former top 100 guys from the Orioles system, while Rougned Odor, Jorge Mateo, John Mike Jones, Dylan Tate, and Jordan Lyles are all former top 100 guys that they've acquired, which is exactly the type of player Baltimore should be accruing right now while they continue to develop their own prospects. The Orioles are like if you went to Denny's with a group of friends and instead of ordering your own breakfast, you ordered a coffee. And then you tried to cobble together a breakfast out of everyone else's scraps. Sure, you will eat, but you're still eating cold, half-eaten leftovers. But you may just find something you really like. And that's the real benefit of a rebuilding team like the Orioles. They can give guys extended looks that may not have a chance to prove their value in other situations. So who makes up this breakfast collage of a baseball team? Here's how they line up defensively. Newcomer Jacob Nottingham is projected to replace Pedro Severino as the starter behind the dish. Nottingham spent time in the Mariners and Brewers organizations in 2021, and more specifically, he was with the Brewers, then the Mariners, then the Brewers, and finally again with the Mariners until he was designated for assignment and then finally signed by Baltimore on December 1st for a minor league contract. Nottingham was once thought to be a bat-first catching prospect, but has seen his defense come along while his bat has slipped, as he hasn't yet shown any ability whatsoever to hit major league fastballs. In his 130 career plate appearances, he owns a 123, 244, 260 line against fastballs, a 310, 333, 759 triple slash against breaking balls, and a 250, 357, 583 line against off-speed pitches. Pitchers have a pretty easy time when they can just pump fastballs over the plate. However, as evidenced by his 237 career ISO and his career 24.2% home run fly ball rate and his 14.3% barrel rate over the last 2 years, he clearly has pop and will run into one in between strikeouts, which have ended almost 40% of his career plate appearances to this point. All of these samples are, of course, too small to make any final calls on Nottingham as a player, but I imagine his leash will be short in Baltimore, if he even makes it there, and is most likely a stopgap for Adley Rutschman. One thing's for sure, though, if the time comes, Nottingham can handle being designated for assignment. Once Adley Rutschman arrives, well, there's no such thing as a sure thing prospect, and I've only seen him play on my computer screen and know more about his stat line than I do about his swing path. He's reportedly a generational talent and will provide a huge boon to the backstop position for the Orioles. Players who hit 40% better than league average at AA and AAA in the same season at age 23 are a decent bet to transition well into the majors and be at least average hitters as rookies. Add Rutschman's superlative defense and makeup, and we're probably looking at a 3-WAR player off the rip. As far as depth, after jettisoning Austin Wynn and Chance Sisco, the Orioles have Anthony Bemboom, Brett Cumberland, and Cody Roberts in the organization, all of whom at some point I expect will receive a few plate appearances and a few innings behind the dish. First base will be mainly occupied by Ryan Mountcastle, who has put on display exactly who he is and who he probably will be in his 726 career plate appearances. He's an above-average bat with good thump and subpar plate discipline that caps his offensive value, and he can play first base. Now, he did take more extra bases than league average last year, and his sprint speed is in the 75th percentile, so maybe there's enough athleticism in here for a 2+ WAR season within him, but at this point it's hard to project him to be much better than he was last year, which is someone who's more of a fantasy asset than a major league star. And as with all right-handed hitters in the Orioles lineup, it'll be interesting to see how much the new left field dimensions impact his power. Trey Mancini will mix in on occasion, and between the two sluggers, Orioles can probably expect somewhere near 35 homers and 100 RBI production from first base, which is a lot more than Chris Davis was going to get. The Orioles have brought in Rougned Odor to man the Keystone, which is fine, because they'll only have to pay him the league minimum and they're not intending to. It's likely he'll form the strong side of a platoon with Jorge Mateo, who has shown enough base running and defensive value to split time at the major league level on a last place team. Mateo actually had the higher OPS between the two players last season, OPSing 670 to Odor's 665, which says more about how bad Odor has been than it does in painting Mateo in any sort of positive light. To complicate matters, both of these players have exuded reverse platoon splits recently. Mateo has posted a 71 WRC plus against left-handed pitching to this point in his career and a 77 WRC plus against righties, while Odor has a 92 WRC plus off lefties the last 3 years and a 69 WRC plus against righties. And while Jahmai Jones deserves an extended look as much as Odor and Marte at this point, he hasn't had much success since High A back in 2017. Third base is just as bad as second, with Kelvin Gutierrez set to man the hot corner. Gutierrez hasn't shown anything in 354 career plate appearances. However, he has a pulse, and so the Orioles will deploy him. Rylan Bannon should be given a shot to see if he can rebound on a terrible 2021 season that may or may have not been hampered by a strained oblique injury in May. Bannon posted a 134 WRC plus from rookie ball for his first taste of AAA in 2019. Lost the year in 2020 and then put up a 76 WRC plus in 2021. Still got a good idea of the strike zone with a 13.8% walk rate in 2021. His triple slash from 2017 through 2019, 280, 375, 481 can't be completely ignored. If he can get hot in AAA to start the year, he should be up and playing over Gutierrez. Bannon already projects to be a better major league player, though probably shouldn't be counted on for anything more than depth as the Orioles transition into a more competitive mode in the next couple of years. The Orioles will cobble together the rest of the innings and plate appearances at third through whatever they can, and would have to get pretty lucky to not produce negative value at third base. At shortstop, Ramon Urias quietly had a strong year in 2021, and I like him to continue to put up better than average numbers in 2022. Projection systems, I think, undersell Urias, though not by much, but because he was so average and relatively old at every stop in the minors, I think it regresses what he's done in the majors just a bit too far. You know, you look at his profile and it's looked really solid, albeit in a small sample size of 287 major league plate appearances. And I don't think he's going to be the 3-WAR player he was pacing towards last year, but go ahead and surprise us all, Ramon. Backing him up will be Richie Martin, a Rule 5 pick from the 2018-2019 offseason who spent time in the Orioles infield in 2019 and 2021. I could see Baltimore adding a really cheap free agent to their infield mix as well, especially since Kelvin Gutierrez doesn't seem to cut it, even on a last-place bound Orioles club. They've added Maikel Franco, Freddie Galvis, Jose Iglesias, and Danny Valencia on one-year deals over the past few seasons, so maybe they go out and get Donovan Solano or bring back Hanser Alberto. Nico Goodrum is at least interesting, as is Chris Owens, as they both provide some pop, some speed, and can play all over the diamond. There are several older veteran infield names out in free agency as well, and I could see someone like Asdrubal Cabrera or Jed Lowry being a fit, maybe even Matt Carpenter, though they haven't been a common landing place for reclamation projects. There's a rumor they might want to add more catching depth, which I guess if they're looking for a veteran to back up and mentor Adley makes some sense, and there's no shortage of good clubhouse veteran backstops left on the market to be had for cheap. In the outfield is where things really start to take shape. Austin Hayes quietly put together a solid 2021, posting a triple slash, 6% better than league average at 256 through at 461. He popped 22 homers and added 70 plus each of runs and RBIs. Hayes played excellent defense at all three outfield positions, and the sum of his parts was a 2.44 season. He spiked his max exit velo and barrel percentage, and looking at his sprint speed percentile and how it's dropped from the 92nd percentile in 2017 down to the 58th percentile last year, shows me that he's been definitely focused on adding strength. He had his best year in terms of plate discipline, though he's still a shade below average when it comes to in-zone swing versus outside of the zone swing. Also, it'll be interesting to see how the ballpark dimensions affect Hayes in 2022 as he carried the 6th shortest average home run distance for players with at least 20 home runs, but I think it's pretty safe to expect his 2022 to look a lot like 2021. You already know what it is in center field. Cedric Mullins stopped switch hitting and lit the league aflame in 2021, posting MLB's only 30-30 season while slashing .291, .365, 18, good for a 136 WRC+. It was worth 5.3 WAR and is the centerpiece of this Baltimore offense. I expect some aggression in the power department, but health permitting, and he's apparently put Crohn's disease behind him, he'll be at the top of the Orioles lineup, providing highly productive offense and base running. I don't see any real reason he shouldn't be a 2020 guy in 2022. That's not time traveling, that's 20 homers and 20 stolen bases. Out in right field, Santander faces down an important season with regards to his personal future. He either slugged his way to an average MLB season, maybe gets traded and earns himself another little chunk of change through arbitration, or he seems likely to become a non-tender candidate at the end of the year. Over 130 games in 2019 through 2020, Santander smacked 33 doubles and 31 homers, slashing .261, .302, .505, good for a 107 WRC+ and 1.6 WAR. His 2021 numbers were down as he was 8% worse than the league average hitter, but he did battle a sprained ankle in April and had his season ultimately cut short with a right knee sprain. While injuries have held him back overall throughout his career, Santander has no real plate discipline to speak of, meaning that he's so dependent on his slugging that if his ISO dips below 220, he runs the risk of providing subpar offensive value. The good news is that his average exit velocity was up last year, he underperformed his xWOBA by 21 points, and all his underlying metrics were pretty much in line with his career numbers. So if it sounds like I'm really down on Santander, I'm not. I like him a lot for this Orioles club, and I think he's got potential for average major league production, maybe a scotch better. Those are the three guys that are going to get the bulk of the innings in the outfield for the Orioles in 2022. When they're not out there, or when they need a break, it's going to be some mix of DJ Stewart, Ryan McKenna, Jorge Mateo, and we'll probably see Yusniel Diaz, although ever since he came over from the Dodgers, he has been a shell of his former self. You know, the depth is where this offense really falls apart, and it's a snapshot of it in the outfield. Rounding out the offense, the DH spot is Trey Mancini. Hell of a comeback last year, even if he did fade down the stretch, 264, 333, 479 through July, and 236, 311, 328 in August through October. I assume Mancini will be traded at some point this season, which will be an emotional moment, no doubt. And in that case, the Orioles won't receive all the benefits of his projections. Just enjoy Mancini while you've got him in Camden, Oriole fans. And DJ Stewart is another name worth mentioning because I still look at his skills and see an above average hitter who could hit 240 with 25 homers in a full season. Though that's probably not this year. So that's an overview of the Orioles depth charts, and I think the offense may surprise some people with how average it's going to be. And by that I mean it's going to be better than people think. If nothing changes, the opening day starting lineup is projected to feature Jacob Nottingham, though in the graphic you see here, I'm going to fit in Rutschman. It's a much better look, and I think provides a more accurate depiction of what you'll see more often from the Orioles in 2022. Pretty okay. Certainly not devoid of any threats, and neither is the starting pitching because they have John Means. Means was more or less the same pitcher in 2021 as he was in 2020, just with a home run to fly ball rate that regressed towards league average, though still sat slightly above it. Means is my primary point of interest regarding the Orioles' decision to move the left field fence back by about 30 feet, as this could potentially shave 2 to 3 home runs off his total surrendered over the course of the season. Interestingly, Means surrendered a 10.1 barrel percent in 2021, by far the highest of his career, so he was also the beneficiary of some good fortune as his 3.62 ERA indicates. It's not to say that barrel percent has a direct correlation to ERA, but I think it points towards Means' true run suppression skill landing somewhere between his 2020 and 2020 ERAs. Barrel percent withstanding, Means is a really good pitcher who's proved that every single stop along the way that he shouldn't be as underestimated as he's been. He doesn't walk anybody. He's got a high spin fastball, one of the game's better left-handed changeups, and a curveball that plays well on both of those pitches, as well as a slider that gets above average results that he'll mix in. He's not afraid to throw any of these pitches in any count, really. His first pitch fastball rate is well below league average, while he uses all of his secondaries far more than league average in 0 counts. I'd like to see him use his fastball less in 2 strike counts in favor of his slider or any of his off-speed pitches, really. And that's even if he walks a couple more guys. Sparing some backdoor sliders or spiking some Uncle Charlie's could help bring his out-of-zone contact rate down, which tends to run about 10 percentage points higher than league average, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but a few more whiffs could possibly push his K rate above league average. John has 3 years of arbitration control left under the CBA that's currently under negotiation, so it's unclear whether he'll be part of an Orioles team that's ready to compete in a couple of years, or if they'll trade him even as soon as this end of this lockout. He would make a great number 2 or 3 on a playoff-bound team and would fetch a really strong return. Probably a guy in the top 15 to 30 prospects in MLB, as well as another back-end top 100 guy that could offer quantity over quality and get a few back-end top. I have one crazy idea where the Orioles trade Mancini and Means to the Padres for the number 6 overall prospect C.J. Abrams and 43rd overall prospect Robert Hassel, but they also take on Hosmer and Myers contracts. While it works out perfectly in terms of future projected dollar per WAR value, I don't think the Padres go for that deal. But anyways, Orioles fans, put it to you. Would you like to see John Means traded now for maximum value, or for the Orioles to keep him through his ARB years, possibly sign him? Let me know in the comments. Now, right before the lockdown was put into effect, the O's signed Jordan Lyles to a 1-year, $7 million deal. And this is all about innings. Every team plays 162 games, and the Orioles need to have pitchers to throw those innings. A little about Jordan Lyles. He's still got some pitches he spins pretty well, and a few sets of pitches that mirror each other really well too. His four-seam and curveball pair nicely, and his slider plays off his changeup and sinker. Maybe the Orioles think they can get 2019 levels of performance out of him. At this point, I trust the new Orioles analytics department over the Rangers, which is where Lyles is coming from. And if the O's can't figure out a way to wring more value out of Lyles' arm, well, his 5.6 ERA, 10.0 K minus walk rate, and 1.89 home run per 9 seamlessly will slide into the Orioles pitching staff who collectively 5.85 ERA, 2.7 K minus walk rate, 1.6 homers per 9. The other 3 rotation spots as of this video would go to Baltimore native Bruce Zimmerman and Keegan Akin and Zach Lowther. Zimmerman showed he was capable of back of the rotation performance to start last year until he badly sprained his ankle in June. If he didn't come back for 2 more appearances last year, his numbers would have looked slightly more palatable. Through June 13th, he had a 4.83 ERA, 1.47 whip, and a 20.2 K rate, 7.6 walk rate. Gets good whiffs on all his pitches, but his 2 most off-used pitches, his fastball and his change, get absolutely lit up as hitters obliterated his fastball to a 475 xWOBA and his changeup to a 387 xWOBA. Maybe this is a case where if he started to use his breaking balls more, they'd lose their effectiveness, but it's worth a shot. Even still, nothing changes. He's a back of the rotation piece. Keegan Akin looked really promising in 25 2/3 innings in 2020, sporting a 3.27 whip and fanning 30.2% of the batters he faced on the strength of a 13.6% swing strike rate. Well, he crapped the bed in spring training, never came close to finding that form in 2020. Slider and curveball both dropped over 200 RPMs, no smoke and fire, and at least partially because of this, he lost tons of movement on his slider and his curve. The 2021 iteration of his curveball moved 1.5 inches less horizontally and dropped nearly 3.25 inches less than the 2020 counterpart. His slider lost almost 1 inch of horizontal movement and 2 inches of drop. It's also possible he lost feel for both of these pitches as their spin axes were completely different between the 2 seasons, especially the slider. It's nearly unbelievable that this would go unnoticed by a major league team, so it's likely he's been working on this over the offseason, and I'll be monitoring the spin axis of his breaking balls in spring training to see if we can catch any hints at what we can expect from Akin in 2022. Zach Lowther rounds out the rotation, and there just isn't much to say about his 2021. He was hit really hard and had a 6.67 ERA. He'll be the first to be pushed to a relief role if DL Hall or Dean Kramer force the way into the starting rotation this year, or if the Orioles sign another arm. Other guys who can be expected to start some games in 2022 are Mike Baumann, Alexander Wells, Spencer Watkins, and maybe Grayson Rodriguez debuts as well, though they don't really have a reason to rush him.
And I think they probably do bring in an arm or two, whether that's a veteran starter or a couple bullpen arms. They've brought in Matt Harvey, Tommy Malone, and Wade LeBlanc over the last couple years, so some names they could link up with out of free agency are Trevor Cahill, Josh Tomlin, Chichi Gonzalez, Julio Teheran, and Shelby Miller. Not the most inspiring group of names, but guys that will give you major league innings.
Now, if the Orioles are leading by the 8th inning, I think they have a good chance to win some games with Tyler Wells and Cole Sulser projected to hold down the end of games. It'll just be getting there that will be the challenge. There are also 500 plus relief innings outside of those 2 arms that need to be accounted for. There's just not many pitchers in the system. That's not to say guys like Joey Kribel, Tanner Scott, Dylan Tate, and Paul Fry are without their arms, but overall this is a pretty weak unit. And this is clearly the last place team in a division with 4 competitive teams, and that's okay. Mike Elias needs more time after inheriting a really poorly run franchise. Like we discussed, the farm system is about to start producing major leaguers at a better rate, and the major league team at least has a handful of interesting players. As currently constructed, my projections see this as a 62-plus win team, but being a last place team, they'll likely sell off a couple pieces and underperform that number. It's hard to project them to be much better than last season, but I do have them down for 56 wins in 2022.
Fantasy. Oh yeah.
From a fantasy perspective, Cedric Mullins is the obvious choice here as he produced first round value last year. Anywhere in the second or third round is a good spot for 10 to 12 team leagues, and I could see him being taken at the end of the first round. I wouldn't go for Ryan Mountcastle if he's within the top 100. I'll probably avoid him altogether because I don't trust the plate discipline, but he's probably the second player to be taken from this team in fantasy. We've got Austin Hayes, who I like a lot in the 150 to 200 range, and same for Mancini, especially if you think he can finish stronger the second full season back from cancer. I like John Means in this range too because I'm just a really big fan and think there's a chance for better home runs and pressure. Santander is a solid power bat in the 210 to 250 range, and depending on when the O's call him up, Adley has a chance to provide good value around here as well too. Now it's either going to be Tyler Wells or Cole Sulser in the 9th, and I want him to be Sussman. I don't like that last name, so change that. But it'll be either of those guys in the 9th, and anyone with a confirmed closer's role is a worthwhile pick at the end of drafts, as those roles have been just so volatile lately. So that's going to wrap it up for this Orioles mid-lockdown preseason preview. I hope you Orioles fans aren't too offended. Most O's fans I know are pretty accepting on the state of their team and understand their fate. Still, go out to that beautiful ballpark and tune in wherever you might be able to. Root on some of these youngsters and relish in Mullins and Means' performances. Let me know in the comments something you're optimistic about, something I missed, or something you want to know. So please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next team preview or all the other baseball content I've got coming for you. Thanks for taking the time to step into the Chatter's Box with me, and I'll see you next time for more baseball talk.